The arrest order, the Grand Hall of the Galactic Federation, was alive with lights and voices. Hundreds of alien leaders, ambassadors, and soldiers stood in a perfect circle under a glowing dome that shimmered like the surface of a distant ocean. Flags of different worlds hung from the high walls, each telling a story of power, history, and pride. Princess Saraya, the daughter of the High Chancellor, sat on the royal balcony, her silver eyes calmly watching the crowd she was used to. Boring political meetings, but something felt different today. The air was tense, like a storm was about to strike. Suddenly, a deep voice echoed through the hall from the central podium. It was the Federation's Grand Marshal, wearing a black and gold uniform with a cape that flowed like smoke. He raised his hand and spoke in a voice that demanded silence. "By the order of the Galactic Federation," he declared, "Human Captain James Carter is under arrest." The words fell like thunder. A wave of gasps and whispers swept through the chamber. Some alien delegates exchanged confused looks, others stared in disbelief. Princess Saraya felt her heartbeat quicken. She had heard of humans before, rare, unpredictable, and stubborn. But she had also heard stories of this Captain Carter. Some said he was a hero who saved a fleet of alien ships from destruction. Others called him reckless and dangerous. But why would the Federation issue a public arrest like this? And in front of every leader in the galaxy? The Grand Marshal continued. "Captain Carter is charged with crimes against the Federation, including sabotage, theft, and treason." He raised a holographic tablet, and Carter's image appeared. Above the podium, a man with sharp eyes, messy dark hair, and a determined jawline. He looked more like a soldier than a criminal. Saraya's gaze narrowed. Something about his face didn't match the words she was hearing. The crowd erupted. In debate, one ambassador shouted, "Humans are unpredictable. They should have been kept off Federation missions from the start." Another argued, "This is false. Carter risked his life for many worlds." The High Chancellor raised his hand to silence them all. "We will speak no more on this matter," he said firmly. "The evidence is sealed, and the order will be carried out immediately." Sealed evidence. That made Saraya's mind race. She knew what that meant. No one except the highest council could view the files. No trial, no questions. But yesterday, before the security system locked the data, she had seen a small part of the evidence, and what she saw made no sense. It was an image, a strange metallic symbol glowing in the dark. It wasn't from any known Federation technology. It felt ancient, powerful, almost alive. And beside it was Captain Carter, standing in some kind of ruin with a look of shock. On his face, why would a single image be enough to charge someone with treason? Unless the truth behind it was something the Federation wanted hidden. Her father noticed her distracted expression. "Saraya," he said in a quiet tone, "do not involve yourself in this. It is Federation business." She nodded politely, but inside she was already making a decision. If the Federation was lying, she had to find out why. And if Captain Carter was innocent, someone had to help him before it was too late. Outside the Grand Hall, news of the arrest spread across the galaxy within minutes. Every news channel broadcast. Carter's face, some called him a dangerous criminal. Others called him a victim of political conspiracy. In a small mining colony on the far edge of known space. Carter himself saw the broadcast on a dusty holoscreen. He sat in a dimly lit workshop, a half-repaired ship engine in front of him. When the announcement ended, he wiped the grease from his hands and smiled bitterly. They finally came for me, he muttered. But instead of fear, there was a spark of determination in his eyes. He walked to a locked metal case and opened it, revealing a small glowing device, no bigger than his palm. It pulsed with a strange blue light. This was the real reason for the arrest, and Carter knew it. The Federation couldn't risk this device being exposed. As the Federation guards began searching for him across star systems, and as Saraya quietly slipped away from the royal balcony with a plan forming in her mind, the fate of both human and alien worlds began to shift. For the first time in centuries, the foundations of the Galactic Federation trembled. And far away, in the silent void of space, destiny prepared to bring the human captain and the alien princess together. The fugitive human, the mining colony of Brask 7, was a forgotten corner of the galaxy. Its skies were always gray from dust. Storms and the air carried the metallic taste of ore. Miners worked long hours in giant machines, drilling into the rock for the rare minerals that the Federation valued so highly. Few ever looked up at the stars, few cared about politics, but in one small workshop on the colony's edge, Captain James Carter watched the Federation's broadcast replay for the 5th time. He sat in a worn-out chair, the light from the holoscreen flickering over his face. The voice of the Grand Marshal repeated the same words. By the order of the Galactic Federation, Captain James Carter is under arrest. Carter's jaw tightened. He had known this day might come, but he didn't expect it to arrive so soon. They were moving faster than he thought, and that meant only one thing. Someone inside the Federation was afraid of what he carried. He stood and walked to the back of the workshop. A heavy metal locker waited there, its surface covered in scratches from years of use. He unlocked it and reached inside, pulling out a small black case. Inside, wrapped in a layer of protective foam, was the same glowing device the Federation wanted so badly. It pulsed with an otherworldly blue light, sending faint ripples through the air around it. Carter stared at it for a long moment, his thoughts heavy. He remembered the mission where he had found it, deep in the ruins of a planet no one had visited in thousands of years. The walls of that ruin had been covered in markings older than any known civilization, and in the center, the device had floated silently, as if waiting for someone to claim it when he touched it. Visions had filled his mind. Strange stars, voices speaking in a language he couldn't understand, and a warning that felt like it came from the past itself. The Federation wanted this device not to protect the galaxy, but to control it. And if they succeeded, no free world would remain free for long. As he locked the device away again, his communicator beeped. The message was short and strange. Meet me at Delta Moonport, Dock 7, at midnight. I can help you. We are both in danger. There was no signature, but the encryption level was military grade. Whoever sent it knew how to reach him without being traced. Carter frowned. It could be a trap. But something told him to take the risk. Far across the galaxy, Princess Saraya stood in her private chambers aboard the royal ship. She had sent the message herself, careful to hide her identity. She knew Carter might not trust her. Humans didn't often trust the Federation, and especially not the Chancellor's daughter. But she couldn't let the truth die in sealed files. She had seen the strange symbol in the evidence and felt the weight of its mystery. It was the same symbol she had seen once before, hidden in the old star maps of her ancestors. If the Federation feared this symbol, then perhaps it wasn't Carter who was dangerous, but the secret he carried. As the sun set over Brask 7, Carter packed a small bag, nothing that could slow him down. He checked his blaster, made sure the ship's engines were ready, and slipped the device into a hidden compartment in his jacket. He left the workshop quietly, blending into the crowd of miners returning from their shifts. Above him, Federation patrol ships cut through the gray sky, their searchlights scanning every street. The hunt had already begun. By the time he reached the outskirts, the storm winds had risen. Dust whipped against his face as he approached the landing zone, where his ship, the Horizon, waited under a camouflage shield. She wasn't the fastest ship in the galaxy, but she was his, and she had kept him alive through more than one close call. As he boarded, he glanced once more at the stars. Somewhere out there, someone wanted to help him, or someone wanted to end him. Either way, by midnight, he would know, and whatever happened next, Carter promised himself one thing: he would never let the Federation take the device, not while he was still breathing. A dangerous meeting. The Delta Moonport was an old rusting hub floating in the shadow of a dead moon. Its docking bays were dimly lit, The walls covered in oil stains and flickering signs from a time when it had been busy with traders. Now it was a place for smugglers, bounty hunters, and those who wanted to disappear. Captain Carter's ship, the Horizon, slipped quietly into Dock 7, its engines cooling with a low hiss. He stepped down the ramp, one hand on his jacket where the device was hidden. The air smelled of fuel and metal, and the only sound was the hum of the docking clamps locking into place. Carter scanned the shadows, looking for movement. He didn't know who had sent the message, and he was ready to walk away at the first sign of trouble. Then he saw her. A tall figure stepped out from behind a cargo container, the silver glow of the moonlight catching her hair. She wore a long dark coat with the hood down, revealing sharp features and eyes that seemed to hold both caution and confidence. "Captain Carter," she said, her voice calm but urgent. "You don't know me, but I know you." Carter's grip on his jacket tightened. "And I'm guessing you're the one who sent the message," he replied, his tone flat. She nodded once. "My name is Saraya," she said, "and I'm here because the charges against you are a lie." Carter almost laughed. "That's nice to hear, Princess," he said, stressing the last word. Her eyes widened slightly. "So you do know who I am," she said. "I make it my business to know who's calling me to suspicious meeting spots." Carter replied, "And it's not every day the High Chancellor's daughter sends me a secret message." Saraya took a step closer, lowering her voice. "You found something the Federation doesn't want anyone to know about," she said. Carter didn't answer. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small holochip. When she activated it, the image appeared between them, the strange glowing symbol from the ruins. Carter's eyes narrowed. "So you've seen it too," he said. "I saw it in the evidence file before it was locked," Saraya replied. "They're not just after you, Carter. They're after whatever that device can do. And they'll destroy anyone who gets in their way." Her voice carried no fear, only determination. For the first time, Carter wondered if she might be telling the truth. Before he could speak, the sound of heavy boots echoed through the dock. Red lights began flashing along the walls. Federation hunters had arrived. "They traced me here," Saraya whispered. "Or me," Carter muttered back, already pulling her toward the Horizon. Blaster fire erupted as black-armored soldiers stormed the dock. Energy bolts scorched the walls, sparks raining down from the ceiling. Carter and Saraya ran up the ramp, the ship's engines roaring to life. The docking clamps resisted for a moment before breaking free with a loud crack. The Horizon shot out of Dock 7, weaving past incoming fire and twisting through the moonport's skeletal framework. As the stars opened before them, Carter glanced at Saraya in the co-pilot's seat. She was breathing fast, but her hands were steady on the controls. "You just painted a bigger target on my back," he said. "You already had the biggest target in the galaxy," she replied without looking at him. "Now at least you have someone to watch it with you." Carter didn't answer, but deep down, he knew one thing: whatever this was, he couldn't run from it anymore, and now neither could she. The hidden war. The Horizon drifted in the cold shadow of an asteroid field. Chunks of rock floated silently, their surfaces glowing faintly from nearby starlight. The ship's engines were powered down to avoid detection. Only the quiet hum of life support filled the cabin. Carter sat in the pilot's seat, his eyes scanning the radar. Saraya sat across from him, leaning forward with her elbows on her knees. She looked calm, but Carter could see the weight in her expression. Finally, she spoke. "You think the Federation fears you because you broke their rules," she said slowly. "But that's not the truth." Carter raised an eyebrow. "Then tell me what is," he said. Saraya took a deep breath. "They fear humans because you discovered something they have been hiding for centuries." She stood and walked to the navigation console, pressing a few keys. The display lit up with an old star map, the lines faint and flickering like a ghost. "These stars here," she pointed, "are from an ancient chart kept in my family's archives." Her voice lowered. "It's older than the Federation itself." Carter leaned forward, studying the map. The stars formed a strange pattern, the same pattern etched into the ruins where he had found the device. His grip tightened on the armrest. "You've seen it before," he said. "Yes," Soraya replied. "Once, when I was a child. In a room my father told me I must never enter again." She turned to face him. "The Federation doesn't want people to know this, but there was a war long before our current history. A war. Against something not from our galaxy." Carter frowned. "And this device?" "It's a key," Soraya said, "or a weapon. No one really knows. But it was left behind by the enemy when they vanished." The air in the cabin felt heavier. Carter thought about the visions he had seen when he touched the device. The warning, the strange voices, the endless stars burning like beacons. "They're coming back," he said quietly. Soraya nodded. "And the Federation's plan is simple. Control the device, control the galaxy, and hide the truth so no one panics." Carter ran a hand over his face. "This isn't just about me," he muttered. "It's about everyone," Soraya said, her eyes locked with his. "That's why they'll hunt us until we're dead, because if this truth spreads, their control ends." A sharp beep from the radar interrupted them. Carter glanced at the screen and cursed under his breath. A Federation patrol had entered the asteroid field, their scanners sweeping through the rocks. "They found us faster than I thought," he said. "They won't stop," Soraya replied. "Standing by the co-pilot's controls. Then we make sure we're not here when they arrive," Carter said, powering up the engines. The horizon rumbled to life. Dust and fragments of rock drifted past the viewports as Carter guided the ship. Deeper into the maze of asteroids. Behind them, Federation ships closed in, their searchlights cutting through the shadows like knives. Carter's mind raced. He now knew why they were being hunted, but the bigger question burned in his thoughts. If this was just the beginning of the truth, what else had the Federation hidden from the galaxy? The betrayal. The horizon slipped out of the asteroid field under the cover of drifting debris. Carter adjusted the course, setting a destination far from Federation patrol routes. He didn't trust many people in the galaxy, but there was one name he thought might help. Vorik, an old smuggler, part-time mechanic, and full-time survivor. Carter had saved his life years ago during a cargo raid, and Vorik had sworn a life debt in return. Soraya sat quietly in the co-pilot's seat, watching Carter's hands move across the controls. "You're sure this Vorik can be trusted?" she asked. Carter gave a faint smile. "As sure as I can be about anyone who sells black market plasma rifles for a living." Soraya raised an eyebrow but said nothing. The truth was, they were running out of options. Several hours later, the horizon descended toward a gas-covered moon. Hidden on its far side was a refueling station built into a hollowed crater. Rusting ships were docked along the edges, and dim yellow lights glowed through the heavy mist. Carter guided the ship into a small landing bay where a wide, three-eyed alien waved them in. Vorik was bigger than Carter remembered, his heavy frame wrapped in a stained coat, his tusks chipped from too many bar fights. "Carter, you old troublemaker," Vorik said with a grin, his deep voice echoing in the hangar. "I heard you've been making friends with the Federation's most wanted list." "Just needed a quiet place to refuel," Carter replied, stepping off the ramp. "And maybe a favor." Vorik's eyes shifted to Soraya. "Royal company, eh?" "You've been busy." Soraya met his stare without flinching. "We're in danger," she said. "And we don't have time for games," Vorik laughed, a low rumble in his chest. "Relax, princess, you're safe here." He gestured for them to follow him into a back room filled with scattered tools and crates. "I'll get you fuel, supplies, and a place to rest," he said. "But you owe me one, Carter." While Vorik worked, Carter stayed near the horizon, scanning the docking area. Something about the way Vorik kept glancing toward the comms console bothered him. Soraya noticed it too, her eyes narrowing. When Vorik left the hangar to check the storage bay, she quietly slipped toward the console. Her fingers moved quickly, pulling up the last transmission log. Her stomach tightened as the message appeared. An encrypted burst sent only minutes ago. The recipient was a Federation patrol ship. The message was short. Target acquired. Send strike team. Saraya's heart pounded. She rushed back to Carter, her voice sharp but quiet. He called them, she said. They're coming here. Carter's jaw clenched. Figures, he muttered. Vorik always liked getting paid. Twice. He didn't waste time. Get to the ship, he ordered. Already heading for the cockpit, the hangar doors began to creak open through the rising mist. The silhouettes of armed soldiers appeared, their weapons glowing faintly in the dim light. Blaster fire lit up the bay as Carter powered the Horizon's engines. Vorik shouted something from across the room, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Saraya activated the shields just as a volley of plasma bolts struck, the impact shaking the ship with a roar of engines. The Horizon blasted out of the hangar, weaving through the crater's jagged walls. Behind them, Federation ships launched. In pursuit. Carter's voice was calm but edged with steel. That's the last time I trust a friend. Saraya looked at him, her tone steady. Then we'll have to make our own allies. And somewhere deep in the galaxy, Vorik counted his credits, unaware that betraying them might one day cost him far more than he had earned. The final stand. The Horizon streaked through deep space, its engines leaving a faint blue trail behind. Federation ships were still hunting them, but Carter had one last destination in mind. An abandoned broadcast array, forgotten at the edge of known space. It was a massive ring-shaped station, half in ruins, floating silently in the dark. Long ago, it had been used to send signals across the galaxy. Now it was nothing more than a drifting skeleton, at least to anyone who didn't know its secrets. Saraya stood by the viewport, staring at the giant structure as it slowly rotated in the void. This is where you plan to make your last stand? She asked, her voice calm but questioning. Carter nodded. If we can send the truth from here, it'll reach every world at once. And if the Federation gets here first? She asked. Carter's mouth curved into a half smile. Then, at least we go down making them regret chasing us. They docked with the array, the old airlocks groaning as if waking from a long sleep. Inside, the station was dark, the corridors filled with floating dust and loose wires. Every step echoed. Through the hollow structure, Carter moved quickly toward the control hub, Saraya close behind. The walls were lined with dead screens and broken panels, but in the center, a large console still hummed faintly, waiting for someone to use it. Saraya began powering it up, her fingers dancing over the controls. Carter kept watch near the main hatch, his blaster ready. Once this is active, it'll only take a few minutes to send the signal, Saraya said. Plenty of time, Carter replied. But even as he spoke, the radar on his wrist lit up. They're here, he said. His voice low. Through the viewport, distant flashes of light appeared. Federation warships dropping out of hyperspace, their hulls glinting in the faint starlight. They moved into attack formation, their heavy cannons charging. Saraya's voice was steady but urgent. Keep them off us until the transmission finishes. Carter nodded once. I'll try to keep the station in one piece while you do it. The first wave of enemy fire slammed into the array, shaking the entire structure. Carter raced to the defense controls, activating ancient turrets that groaned as they came to life. Rust and age made them slow, but they fired, scattering bright streaks of plasma into the black. Federation fighters swarmed closer, weaving between the debris of the ruined station. Carter's hands moved fast, locking onto targets and firing before they could get close enough to breach. Saraya's eyes stayed fixed on the console, her voice cutting through the chaos. Signal at 40%, keep them busy. Working on it, Carter muttered, blasting another fighter into a cloud of glowing fragments. The warships opened fire again, a beam tearing through one of the array's outer rings. The metal screamed as it broke apart, pieces spinning into the void. Carter gritted his teeth. Come on, Princess. We're running out of station. Signal at 70%, just a little more, she called back, her voice tense but controlled. A warning alarm blared. Boarding ships had latched onto the far side of the station. Armed soldiers were cutting their way inside. Carter grabbed his blaster and moved toward the hatch. "Lock the door behind me, and don't stop until it's sent," he said. Soraya's eyes flicked to him for a second, but she nodded. "I won't." As Carter ran into the dark corridors, blaster fire lit the walls in red and white flashes. Federation soldiers pushed forward, but Carter fought them with precision. Every step they took, he forced them back. The sound of Soraya's voice over the comm echoed in his ear. "Signal at 90%, almost there." Carter ducked. Behind cover, returning fire. He knew they couldn't hold forever, but all that mattered was buying enough time. The truth revealed. The control room shook as another blast hit the station. Panels sparked and smoke filled the air, but Soraya's hands never stopped moving. Her eyes stayed locked on the transmission progress bar. 98%, 99. And then, 100, the console let out a deep, resonating tone as the data pulsed out into the galaxy. Encrypted files, hidden recordings, and Carter's own logs streamed across every comm channel. On thousands of worlds, people stopped to watch as the truth unfolded. They saw Carter in the ruins, standing before the glowing symbol. They saw the Federation Council ordering the evidence to be buried, and they heard Soraya's voice explaining what the device truly was. A warning left behind from an ancient enemy. A message the Federation had tried to erase in the corridors outside. Carter fought his way back toward the control room. Blaster bolts streaked past him, soldiers shouting orders over the comm. He took cover, fired, moved, and fired again. Every second he bought was another second the signal spread. By the time he reached the hatch, the last of the data was already gone. The truth was free. Soraya looked up from the console as he entered. "It's done," she said, her voice carrying a mix of relief and exhaustion. Carter allowed himself a quick smile. "Then let's get out of here before this place becomes space dust." But before they could move, the main viewport lit up with the image of the High Chancellor himself. His face was carved in cold anger. "Soraya," he said, his voice heavy with fury, "you will return to me now, and the human will be executed for his crimes." Soraya stood tall, her eyes locked on her father's. "No," she said, her voice steady. "I will not return. And Carter has committed no crime. The Federation has." The Chancellor's image flickered, his jaw tightening. "This will make you an enemy of the state," he warned. "Then I am an enemy," Soraya replied. She turned to Carter. "Let's go." The horizon tore away from the array just as the Federation warships opened fire. Behind them, the station erupted in a blinding wave of light, its remains scattering into the void. But the message had already traveled beyond their reach. Across the galaxy, rebellions began to spark. Worlds questioned the Federation's authority. Old alliances began to crumble in the quiet of the cockpit. Carter stared at the stars ahead. "This isn't over," he said. "No," Soraya agreed, a faint smile touching her lips. "It's just beginning." And somewhere in the deep unknown, something ancient and powerful stirred, drawn by the signal they had just unleashed. A shadow from the past now knew exactly where to find them.